Good afternoon, 223 Independent Studies. I wanted to post a video to touch base on where we are as we transition out of week 6 and into week 7. We're kind of at I don't want to say a lull, but we're at a good place where if there's some work that needs to be done to be caught up, that this is kind of a good place to do it. So I want us to walk through and look at the syllabus. So I am going to, let me go ahead and put this on the student preview so all of the things on my screen aren't distracting. Okay, if we go into the student preview and we're looking at the syllabus and text, if we go down to our schedule, I just want to touch base on kind of the end of week 5 through week 6 and into week 7. So you'll see right here in week 5, we had chapter 7 and then chapter 6 quiz was due, which you guys were fine with those. And then in week 5 we also had that the article for how poverty affects student engagement was due, and you both have turned that in, so you're set for that. We then, in week 6, this current week, we had that the IDEA family pamphlet or flyer was due. I'm going to go into depth about that today. I'm going to walk you through the rubric and then show you some examples so that you know. I also have extended that deadline. Instead of having you turn it in this Sunday, I'll extend that to next Sunday so that following this information and looking at the samples, you kind of have a little more time to game plan around that. Also this week we had chapter 8 and then we completed chapter 7 wrapping it up quiz, which you guys both finished, so that's fine. And then going into week 7, we're going to be looking at chapters 9 and 10, and then they're wrapping it up quizzes also. If you're looking at the syllabus, this video reflection information right here, I'll include that in the next video for week 8, because that is something that will apply once we've finished chapter 10. So we'll look at that then. All right, let me go back over here. Let's go into our course content, and we'll start by looking at week 6. So in week 6, here we have chapter 8. That's what we've been working on this week. So you'll go into chapter 8, and then you'll also be able to take the wrapping it up quiz here. Now I want to take a few minutes and go through this IDEA family pamphlet rubric. So if I click on this and I pull the rubric up, I just want to walk through these parts with you. If you go through the textbook, you will find this information literally point by point. I will also upload the chapter presentation so that you can look at that as well, because the information would both be in those places, and that should cover you with anything that you need. All right, so let's look at, this is a 50-point project, and the first piece that you're going to have is a description of IDEA, noting the year of the latest legislative update. So for full points, you are going to include IDEA, its full name, what does that stand for, as well as the acronym, as well as a description of what IDEA is, and the latest year that IDEA has been updated through the legislation. Then another section of your flyer or your pamphlet is going to be about free appropriate public education, or FAPE. And in this section, you are going to have the full name, so free appropriate public education, the acronym of FAPE, and a description kind of summary of what it is. Pre-placement evaluation is a part of the IDEA IEP process. So at this point, you're going to include, the pre-placement evaluation summary. So what's happening in this pre-placement evaluation? You're also going to include evaluation rules. So there's a list of a few things that have to happen in the evaluation process. And then also any second language evaluation guidelines. There's a small piece in the textbook about what happens if this IDEA IEP process is happening with students who do not speak English or who are ESL. So you want to put a little extra blurb in there about that. It is in the textbook. Then you have your Individualized Education Plan, your IEP, as another component of this pamphlet or flyer. Here, again, just like before, you're going to list Individualized Education Plan, the full name, the IEP acronym, and a description of what an IEP is, including IEP elements. There is a list of elements that go into an IEP, and that's what you're including here. Then we're going to move into a section about Least Restrictive Environment, or LRE. Again, you're going to include the full name of Least Restrictive Environment, the acronym of LRE, and then a description of what that means. Then we go to Response to Intervention, or RTI. Again, the full name, acronym, and a summary. And then the pamphlet and flyer itself, you have points for if it's visually appealing, if it's organized. The sections that are over here listed on the left are clearly established in your pamphlet or flyer, and you have clear labels, and it's easy to read. The whole point of this project and this task is that IDEA is a complicated thing for parents to understand. It's an overwhelming process. So this should be something that is written in terms for parents and families to be able to understand that process and what the parts of that process are. And then again, your pamphlet or flyer language is in parent-friendly language so that it's a resource for them. So I'm going to show you, these are not going to be uploaded into the Blackboard site because I don't want them to become copies of what you're turning in. But I do want to show you some examples of them. So I'm going to pull those up. Okay. So it can be in any format. It can be a trifold, it can be a flyer, it can be folded in half. So this was an example of someone who did theirs as a trifold. So you can see she has the labels of the categories that were laid out on the rubric, and then she's got the name, the acronym, and a definition. So this is one example. Here's another example of someone who did it more as just a flyer. So she's got the pieces of information on here listed as a flyer and with some descriptions. We've also got someone who did theirs as another trifold, just another example of what that looks like for you to see. And this may be the last one. And then this flyer also is a trifold. But just so you have some examples and some context to see how others have done it in the past, I wanted to make sure that I gave you those as a visual example. Okay, so I again extended that deadline so that it's not due until next Sunday at 11:59. That way, if you maybe were working on it a little bit, and then based on my explanation and the examples, you maybe want to change something or work on it. That way you have plenty of time. Okay, so that's it for week 6, chapter 8, and then chapter 8, wrapping it up quiz, and then your IDEA pamphlet. Those were from this current week. Then if we go into next week, which is week 7, week 7 is just chapters 9 and 10. There's no extra or outside tasks or projects on top of that. So then it's going to be chapter 9 and 10 to read and do the wrapping it up quiz for those. So between now and next Sunday at 11:59, you have chapter 8, 9, and 10 reading and wrapping it up quiz for each of those, and then your IDEA pamphlet or flyer. I did extend that deadline and turn it in, so it should allow you to turn it in. The one caveat is I believe it needs to be a PDF. So if you're making it in another program, be sure that you save it as a PDF so that you're uploading the PDF. It will not allow any other file type to be uploaded. All right, other than that, I think, guys, you're doing a great job. You're staying on top of things, asking questions. So if anything comes up and you have anything or need anything clarified, please just let me know. Reach out, email, schedule a time to meet with me. Otherwise, keep up the great work. Thank you.